Talking F1 with Steve, Neil and the Gov. Hello again, my friends, and you are my friends, and welcome to your Monday night pit stop. It is 7:23. We are live across the internet for Talking F1, the show that puts the F1 fans firmly in control, gives you the microphone, gives you the live chat, gives you the platform, as we do on all our HDR media productions, to say, hey, have your say, have it live, and get involved. So, Canadian Grand Prix. I think it was the first in 19 years, if memory serves me correctly. How did it deliver for you? We will get into that throughout the course of this evening, from Mercedes with Hamilton and Russell inside the top five. Charles Leclerc weaving his way through the traffic, as it were, and of course Max Verstappen taking pole. You kind of watch this show on our YouTube platform if you are listening through one of our audio platforms. And just by saying that, if you're watching us, you will of course now also know you can grab us on an audio platform. Just search Talking F1 and you should come across a decent F1 show, and possibly R1. Joining me are two wonderful gentlemen, the first of which we all know and love, the aficionado, Stephen Thompson.
No, I think Bottas he'll be the one to really hold out.
Oh, Bottas, he's the one.
Where did he go? Hello,
how are you?
I'm not bad. Yourself?
Good.
Just so quick. It wasn't the first Canadian Grand Prix for 19 years. First one since 2019.
I knew I'd seen the word 19 and Canadian in the same sentence at some point, but it's been one of those days. I couldn't even tell you what year we're in, so I'm pleased you cleared it up. I take it we're well past 2019.
Yes.
EJ's in the chat. Love to see it. Louis joined him. Love to see that. As other people watching, I can definitely know that. I can see it through the dashboard. So get involved. If you're watching, you can, of course, just watch and not partake. But if you want to get a comment in, then please do so. So the first Canadian Grand Prix since 2019. Let's start with it right there then, Steve. How did it go for you? Because it was a wet old qualifying. How did the race deliver?
Yeah, the race wasn't quite as exciting as the qualifying in terms of on-track action. It all came down to strategy, really. EJ said it in the chat there. Basically, Max was always going to win, really. As soon as Leclerc was confirmed to be starting at the back, it was never really in doubt, was it? It was a decent race. I quite enjoyed it. As a Leclerc fan, it was nice to see him, charge through the field. And also as a George fan as well, he was not quite on the pace of Lewis this time, which has been unusual this season. It's usually the other way around.
Yeah. So the top three going into Sunday's race were Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso. Was it Fernando Alonso? It was.
Yeah. First front row start since 2012 for old Nando.
Talk to me about that, because I was watching it. I was watching the interview they did on the grid afterwards, with the three drivers, and I can't tell you who the interviewer was, but I think it was an American chap. He almost dismissed Fernando there and then. It was always going to be about, can Max maintain the pole, and I think was it Sainz? Yeah,
Sainz third.
Would he challenge him, come through and it was almost like the guy in second or third, you're not even important, mate. You're just here because you happen to be the best of the rest.
Yeah, I can see the logic, because the Alpine is not going to be as quick as the Ferrari or the Red Bull. That's another league. But, this is Fernando Alonso at the wheel. He is one of the greatest drivers on the grid. So it is a shame he couldn't keep it up. He had a power unit problem from about lap 20 onwards, which was costing him straight line speed. And Alpine messed up not one, but two VSC periods and pit stops. So strategy in a poorly car really did cost him it. And he got a penalty at the end for blocking or for weaving or something.
Yeah. It was the car primarily there then because of the track conditions across qualifying.
It was a mixture of that car enjoying those sort of conditions and the guy behind the wheel. Fernando can get the best out of really terrible cars, very similar to Lewis in that respect. So I don't think it was entirely down to the conditions. Fernando absolutely aced it. And unfortunately, I think as soon as I saw that it was going to be a bright, shiny, sunny race, I was thinking, well, this is going to be tricky for Fernando to keep it up there. But Yeah, he did a fantastic job in qualifying. I'll say his first front row start since 2012 for Ferrari. So,
all right, perfect. Talking about Alpine, I'm going to pose the question to our third member of the team. Did Alpine throw away a chance at a podium? Mr. Positivity, Neil Moles.
Yeah, but we're crap. We're not going to dominate any team.
And to hopefully answer that question and many more in the course of the evening, Neil Moles. How are you,
Hello
Mr.
there.
Moles? How are you?
Yeah, pretty good.
Good man. I'd say someone who's not going to be pretty good after being in that front three. Got to be Alonso. Did Alpine throw the podium chance away, Neil?
I think it would have been a tough ask as it was a dry race. I was hoping for wet conditions because it would have just meant that more teams were within a chance. Max just done what we expect of him these days, and just he was cruising it, really, wasn't he?
He did. And then, he did.
I sort of believe Alpine threw it away. I'm not 100% sure on their decisions, and especially at the end. Was I right in mentioning earlier that he's been given a 5-second penalty?
Yeah.
So he finished behind the two Alfa Romeos, all because Alpine wanted him to stay behind Ocon to defend. It's just ridiculous. Even he was moaning, "What? I'm quicker. I've had a better weekend overall. Just let me by." And they were like, "No."
You're a brave man to tell Fernando Alonso to play number 2.
So all in all, I guess as teams jumped him, I know there were some cheap pit stops that probably didn't help him, and he didn't use them. But all in all, he dropped down, and yeah, whether he could have in a fair fight had a chance, but it wasn't to happen, was it really?
Were you surprised at that exchange, Neil, between Control and Alonso, in the sense of, as Steve's just said, you're brave telling the man that he's effectively, you are the number 2 driver here. You are, Ocon is our chief. He's our number 1. Did that exchange surprise you at all?
I didn't see it as in they were saying Ocon's the number 1. It was Ocon was struggling to maximise points for the team overall. They sacrificed Alonso, knowing his ability to be able to hold a position, just to get the team an overall higher amount of points. Because even if Alonso got past Ocon, he wasn't catching the next man up the road. So was it Leclerc?
Yes. So then to suffer that point, that penalty, Steve, that then makes that decision sort of a double whammy, because you're not only
null and void.
Yeah, it's hit him even harder.
Yeah, just to clarify, I wasn't saying that he's the number 2 driver at Alpine, because I don't think he is at all. But for this weekend, he was obviously second on the road in terms of the race. But yeah, that hit him even harder. So he only got 2 points out of what could potentially have been much higher, a podium maybe. Who knows? We will never know.
Is it? And we'll get to some comments in a second, because there's some great ones coming in. But we've had the Alpine sort of round up this chat on the Alonso and Alpine team struggles. Is there a real chance, though, really, long term? Alonso, he's not got a long-term future in the sport, hasn't he? This is the last hurrah. He isn't the number 1 driver. He can't be. He's not got the future, Steve.
Nando, he's the number 1 driver. Yeah, he's in F1 for this year, and it's all but confirmed, apparently, that he's going to be at Alpine again next year, when hopefully they can get themselves closer to the front. With Piastri, potentially, he looks like he's moving to Williams. But yeah, he's the number 1 driver. He's Fernando Alonso. He's double world champion. He's one of the greatest drivers that we've seen in Formula 1, certainly of his generation. He doesn't play second fiddle, And he's 41 almost. He's 41 in July, but unquestionably he is still the number 1 driver, and he has been more impressive than Ocon. I know Ocon got that win in Hungary last year, but Fernando is getting podiums and obviously putting it on the front row and in tricky conditions. So he has been the more impressive, I would say.
Okay.
I know it took Ricciardo to leave for them to get Fernando back in the door, but they've expressed many times that Fernando is their man, and he always has been since the Renault days when he won his 2 world championships with them. And to go on to his abilities, he proved this weekend in qualifying and was it practice 3, that he's head and shoulders above Ocon. So.
Okay. Yep. Metal Jace said to cut at the end, made a good ending. Louis said it was good to see Hamilton back on the podium. We'll get to Hamilton in a very short while. Louis, great comment. EJ's also happy for Hamilton. He also asks Neil, EJ doesn't know why Alonso didn't box when Max and Hamilton did first time.
I think Alpine slightly fall into McLaren's issue where they're driving the same sport, but as far as being off the pace with race wins and racecraft within the team, they're just off the boil. It's poor decision making, and I believe they were trying to go for whatever strategy they originally had in mind, and they were seeing it through, and it just didn't pay off. His tyres were wearing out. He had lack of grip, and he just lost out.
Yeah. Metal Jace, Alonso's weaving was a bit over the top, and Louis, I think Alonso left it too late to pit. If he pitted earlier, he may have finished higher. A lot of love in the chat for Hamilton. We'll come to that with Steve. Hamilton then back in the top positions. He says, we're making progress. It's in the right direction. Both him and George Russell were in the top 5. So, how are Mercedes doing for you? The Silver Arrows, are they back flying?
Tricky to say because they reckoned they were back after Barcelona, and then they went to the following race and struggled again, and they were nowhere really in Baku. It's tricky, isn't it? I mean, it's a change to see Hamilton finishing ahead of George because George, although he's still got another top 5 finish, so he's doing really, really well with that. George tended to have had the upper hand this season. So George could have qualified ahead of him, but he tried that bold move going on to slicks in quali, which didn't pay off. He ended up in the barrier. Lewis had the track position, and he was quicker in the race. He dropped George, especially after that safety car restart. Just completely dropped George. And he was very relieved. And it was a very big change of opinion from Friday where he was saying the car is undrivable. 2 days later, he's spraying the champagne on a podium. So I don't know what they've done, whether the car was favouring certain conditions, but it was a solid drive from him. He kept his nose clean. He got in a bit of a tussle with Kevin Magnussen at the very start of the race. But it was a decent drive from him, and they've clearly been working hard this season, and it's not been easy. The drivers have been in pain, and the team have been in pain, and it's good to see him get a podium and to see their hard work starting to pay off. And I hope they can drag themselves back into this fight.
Yeah, because I think the more, the better teams, the more teams you've got at the top end of the order, Neil, the better for the sport, particularly when one of them is as big of a poster child or boy or whatever, as Lewis Hamilton is for the sport of Formula One. People automatically recognize him as the Formula One driver. And if you do not even know the sport, you know who he is and you know what he does.
And he's now being given Brazilian citizenship.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, why not? The beaches are good.
No, he's got Senna dear to his heart, and he holds up the Brazilian flag, and he does positive things for promoting Brazil. So they decided he was worthy. But to go back to your question, he had a good weekend. Russell, they tried a higher rake concept in which I'm not sure paid off for him. And Lewis had a one-off brilliant weekend, and that is more what I expected for this season. This is how I expected it to be within the team. So whether from now on this will be how it is, or whether it's just a one-off, we'll see.
Did either of you see how Lewis rocked up to the Canadian Grand Prix?
No.
In the all denim. Man's a fashion
denim on
icon.
denim.
Man's a fashion icon. I always thought that was a mistake, but apparently, if Lewis Hamilton says it's okay, then hey, I'm Joe Bloggs, so I'll be wearing denim on denim the next time we go out for a meal, boys. All right.
Maybe he's just forming a status quo tribute act.
I like it. No. So I'm talking about, changing gear a little bit, but sticking with the Mercedes, Toto Wolff. We must have all heard this story. I'll pull up an extract from a newspaper that was released today in regards to Toto Wolff and Christian Horner, where the two apparently the headline reads Toto Wolff loses his S asterisk asterisk asterisk. You can make your own mind up at home what that is. Feisty F1 meeting as Christian Horner aims Mercedes dig. Now I'm sure we've all heard about this story. They're at it again. Get them both on pay-per-view, surely. This is the greatest match outside The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, isn't it, Neil? This is what we want to see. Forget Verstappen winning a race. We want to see these two in the ring.
To be fair, when you see Lewis and Max, they're completely different this season. Max as a whole, he seems a completely different person. They seem fine, but yeah, what Toto and Horner have is, yeah. I haven't actually read this headline, so on this occasion, a little bit
of it. The report quotes one witness to the meeting who states that Wolff lost his ship as Horner took issue with his arguments. Ferrari boss Binotto also reportedly disagreed with Wolff, insisting that the Austrian was only unhappy because Mercedes had got their design wrong. So this is a meeting, I believe.
Is this for the new rule that they've tried to bring in?
Yeah.
But if anything, I don't get it. The other teams are complaining that it's Mercedes are getting their own way, but as far as I could understand, it's a rule that meant that they would measure how hard the teams were hitting the ground, and therefore, if it hit above a certain amount, they would have to raise their ride height, in which would make them slower around the track, increase their lap times. So, if Mercedes are having a harder time, then it would mean they have made themselves slower via this new rule. So I just don't get why the other ones would say this is ridiculous.
Oh, I'm getting a bit tired of hearing what Christian Horner thinks about everything, to be honest. Every weekend when they go to the race, now we go to Christian Horner on the pit wall. Just talk to someone else. You've got other people. Talk to Fred Vasseur from Alfa. Don't talk to Toto. Talk to Fred Vasseur from Alfa Romeo. Talk to Jost Capito at Williams. Talk to someone else apart from Christian bloody Horner all the time. I mean, I'm sick of this whole Toto Wolff Christian Horner thing now. Drive to Survive pumped it up to something I think it wasn't as well.
Well, I read one report this weekend that there was a huge round front of the Drive to Survive cameras. I don't know how true that was. It was on Reddit. Take it with a pinch of salt. But how fucking good would that be? Live in front of the cameras.
Yeah, it's because Mercedes want under safety grounds. They want some changes, and obviously, I agree that it's a stupid idea. Mercedes have failed miserably, and now they're crying for a rule change.
You should be made to pay for it. You should be made to pay for it because they obviously spent millions and a lot of time investing in developing this car, and now suddenly they're not the dominant. We've had it with Red Bull in the past. Suddenly they're not the dominant force, and they're struggling, and they cry about it. Red Bull did exactly the same when their dominant era ended. Mercedes are doing it now because they're not wiping the floor. It probably happened to Ferrari after their domination. It's happened to Renault. Dominant periods will always come and go for teams. There's going to come a point now where we hit another dominant run, probably with Red Bull by the looks of it, and that will end. So Christian Horner's probably going to start crying after the next period ends, when Williams take over and become the dominant force, of course. But I just get sick of hearing about it now. You got your design wrong. Suck it up.
I know that Horner is complaining about having the cost cap increase because in Britain there's the 11% rise, and basically any deliveries or transportation that's happened has been increased by 11%, as he claims, and basically that just means that they'll, if keep pushing, it will end up going over the cost cap apparently. So, but the argument is there's all them other teams that are able to do it.
So the argument,
but he won't. He won't have it. The fact that he complains at Mercedes that want these changes, but yet he's just as bad because he's complaining that he needs a cost cap rise, but there's teams that aren't having any trouble at all, and he just can't see that.
Lots of love for Christian Horner in the chat, as you would expect. You mentioned Williams there to shift it into another gear. I felt a little bit embarrassed for you guys actually on the weekend because they flashed a graphic on the screen of the constructors' points. So say you're not really bothering this year with, your nearest rival, I think was it the Alpha, one of the Alphas who's near the bottom of you? But even then, it's not really close.
It'd be AlphaTauri, I presume.
I thought it was AlphaTauri, but it wasn't really close. It was like bless them.
After a couple of races, I think Williams was sitting in 8th. They had a good, some good results. Albon got some points. McLaren was struggling. Aston was struggling. They found their feet. Williams haven't yet. The car is not brilliant. I'd hate to think where we'd be if we didn't have Alex Albon, because he is dragging that team right now. He is carrying it. Latifi, again, another quiet weekend from him, I suppose. He did manage to pass Kevin Magnussen towards the end of the race, so, well done.
You're on 3. The nearest rival to you is Haas on 15 now. I mean, this might be me being a new fan, Neil, but that doesn't look like a gap. That seems like you're going to start climbing Kilimanjaro.
Bit worse.
Yeah, I know Williams have got an upgrade coming for Silverstone, and it is definitely needed. It's supposed to be quite a substantial upgrade. I did talk to someone and say about this upgrade, and they laughed and said, "Yeah, it'll be Piastri."
Yeah, I really hope so. Well, Piastri, from what it sounds like, they reckon Piastri is going to be in Latifi's seat next year. Albon has been doing so well in that car. After a couple of races, there's no points, but you think, all right, it's early days. And then he got a point in Australia with that amazing, almost race-long stint. And then a couple of points in Miami. And since then, he got it into Q2 on Saturday, which was brilliant, considering the circumstances and the conditions. And just didn't really make progress in the race. The car is still underperforming. It's a bit of a dog, really. And I was so hopeful this year that Mercedes, with the new regulations, Williams could at least challenge regularly for points, but it's not materialized yet. So I really hope this upgrade does just bring him a few extra tenths, just so they can get into Q2 more regularly and they can start challenging for 8th, 9th, 10th,
I mentioned the Haas team there, Neil. They equaled their best ever qualifying performance with the 5th and the 6th. But then it all went wrong. What
when you
to them?
When you mentioned that they've got 15 points, that is just atrocious. You think the car they've got, where they qualify, how they start the races, and then they just throw it away. I'd say, Magnussen has had some interesting clashes, which hasn't helped him. But on the whole, it's mostly been reliability. Poor old Schumacher of the last couple of races could have finished quite well, and it's just, gone wrong for him.
Absolutely gutted for Mick. My heart broke for him. 5th and 6th, brilliant for Haas. Schumacher's best ever quali, equaling their best result since the early days of the team. And it all went wrong for K-Mag on lap 1 with a little tussle with Lewis. And then Mick, it's gutted seeing him grinding to a halt. Absolutely heartbroken. A few of the issues this year have been of Mick's fault. Monaco binning it, Saudi Arabia binning it, Miami binning it into Vettel. But you think 15 points for a car that finished 5th in the first race in Bahrain is amazing. It's not. It's awful. Wrong word. But they could be so much higher up in the constructors. They really could.
I think Haas came out and said the Monaco crash was a failure of sorts.
Okay. Well, that makes it. Well, it doesn't make it better, but doesn't change the result, does it? But Saudi Arabia was his issue when he split the car in two for the first time. And then obviously, Miami. I think that sort of thing with Mick, just learns to be a little bit more patient. You were going to get points anyway, but he just tries to push for that extra point or two and ended up going straight into the side of Seb. He's got a bit of patience to learn probably driving alongside Kevin Magnussen is not the kind of guy who's going to teach you patience, because Kevin Magnussen is very much a balls to the wall, go for it sort of driver as well. So if you want to learn to calm down, he's not the driver to be alongside. But it will come good. I'm confident. I think he is. We're seeing improvements. So he just needs that reliability now, and he just needs to keep a calm head. We saw the same thing from Verstappen in his early years as well. So yeah, I'm confident.
5 races now without points for Haas. Another team down there with them, only a point more, Aston Martin. Fantastic practice speed, Neil, but it just sort of disappeared as quick as it came. What went wrong?
Well, Stroll, I think in the end finished higher of the two, unfortunately, but
got a point.
Most of the weekend he's been appalling. Barely noticed he was out there, and Seb went from being, was it practice 3, right up there? Was he 3rd, something like that?
Yeah,
and then when it came to qualifying, he came on the radio and said, "What's happened to the car?" Because it just wasn't the same beast, and he doesn't know why, and I'm not sure the team know why either.
I was so looking forward to seeing what he could do, because it was FP3, Fernando Alonso quickest, Pierre Gasly 2nd, Sebastian Vettel 3rd. Amazing. And then out in Q1, just a couple of hours later, bang, he's 17th, 18th. And you think, where has this pace gone? And then there was just no pace in the race either. Stroll was the head of a very impressive DRS train for a large part of the race. And Seb was just pretty anonymous through the whole thing. That car is not brilliant, is it? I mean, they're improving it. It's obviously improved since that first race, but there's a lot of work to do. I hope they don't get too far ahead of Williams, though.
Well,
don't improve it too much.
Don't improve it too much, but it was disappointing. Talking of disappointments, we'll come to the last disappointment I've got before we come to the winner, although that may be disappointing for some. McLaren leading the midfield pack at the moment, Neil, but they did let the door back in for Alpine. Well, talk us through the virtual safety car pit stop. What on earth has gone on there?
Yeah, the team have come out and said they're going to investigate it because they know they're better than that. They've done a double stack, in which they've done a few times of late, and they just didn't even have the tyres ready for him. Poor old Lando sat there in the front right corner, hasn't even got a wheel. I think they brought the wrong ones out as well, because they put a medium on the left front, and then they take that off and then they put the hards on.
Did you hear Lando's comment after the race about it?
No.
The reporter said, "What happened in the pit stop?" And Lando replied, "There were no tyres, which is a problem because you need tyres to run a car." And that was a very Kimi Räikkönen-esque response.
Passive-aggressive at its best.
Yeah, it was a shame, wasn't it? I mean, Ricciardo seemed to have the edge over Norris most of the weekend. Hopefully he's getting a bit of confidence back. Really hope so. But
where the team was overall, if Ricciardo's showing the pace, I do remember, was it a couple of seasons ago, Lando had a couple of weekends where I just guess he doesn't get on with the track very well. So I'm just hoping that he'll bounce back. But
yeah, you do tend to notice that, don't you? Certain tracks will favour certain drivers. You know, Hamilton always goes so well in tracks like Hungary and Canada, and others just always seem to struggle. I know Lando's saying about certain tracks he doesn't really get on with. This would be the... Oh, no, he has run in Canada before, hasn't he? 2019. He was in F1 in 2019, I think. So, yeah, he was his first season. So, yeah, it is a shame they didn't score points, because with everything that was going on, you had cars obviously out of position. It would have been a good opportunity. So, hopefully they'll be back in it in Silverstone.
Good evening, Duncan. Hope you're well. Metal Jace, I'm sure I heard AM cook the tyres too quickly. Possibly so. And Louis feels sorry for Schumacher. Has he not suffered enough? What does he have to do to get a point?
Keep the car in one piece.
Well, the man with many points at the moment is Max Verstappen. He took the pole, Steve, but reliability issues creeping in.
Yeah, dominant. Well, actually, I wouldn't say dominant really, because he had a lot of pressure from Carlos right at the end of the race there with that safety car start. Pole position, I don't think really was in doubt, considering the in-form pole guy was starting at the back of the grid. But yeah, any any sort of lingering doubts about whether Red Bull had sorted out their early season reliability issues seem to have been creeping back in, because they've had a few races now with no problems. Obviously, Ferrari have been the ones with the issues. And then this time, Perez, a poor weekend from him, binned it in the wall in quali, and then didn't get very far in the race. Whether that had been playing on Max's mind as well. Reliability is always a concern, but it seemed like they turned a bit of a corner, whereas now, who knows, things can change very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil, Max taking pole as we round up today's show.
Yeah, he just, as I mentioned early on, he just had a solid weekend. He's just doing what a champion should, and he seems untouchable without having a driver like Lewis, and Leclerc having the good old engine swap, so he started from the back. Without having those drivers that can turn it up a little bit and fight it out, Max has just got the field to himself.
There we go. Well, are we anywhere next week? Is it a week off?
It's a week off. Yeah, a couple of week break between now and
couple of weeks.
Well, 1 week.
Okay, good.
Yeah, just the 1 week off. Next one, of course, is the big one. It's Silverstone.
Are you going this year, Steve?
No.
No, you going, Neil?
No.
I really wish I was. I can't believe it's been almost a year since I've been.
It's very expensive, though, isn't it? Let's be honest.
It's expensive as hell. It's such an amazing experience. Certainly not something I could do year in, year out, money-wise. But this is it. The home of Formula One, the big one. This is where Charles Leclerc gets the championship back on track. Williams are going to score points.
I suppose we should mention Charles before we do disappear, to be fair. If he had the penalty that pushed him back to 10 places, and then he ended up being at the back of the grid for taking another penalty. Is that right? Am I right in saying that? This one for the engine. Correct me if you hear anything incorrect. And then, of course, he weaved his way through the traffic and ended up finishing inside the top 5. So, a busy weekend for Charles Leclerc. How do we see it, guys?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
What particularly about it did you love?
Well, I didn't love the fact that he had to start last. That obviously was not ideal. But I love to see him carving his way through the field. And it's proof that he's a bloody good racer. You know, because he spent most of the season at the front behind only 1 or 2 cars. So to see him charge back from last, he was brilliant. My only concern, as it is for every race for Ferrari, is whether they're going to mess up the strategy. But they didn't. They did it very well and got him a top 5 finish, which he may have hoped for more, but decent damage limitation.
Yeah. Neil, how did you see his drive?
Well, I suppose on one hand you have to be happy that he got 5th, but mid-race he was struggling for pace. I'm not sure, I can't remember what set of tyres he was on, but there were cars that he was just not able to pass. It was lap on lap, he was still behind them.
And, Ocon, he was stuck behind Ocon for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah, and
because Ocon was getting an incredible drive out of that last corner with that hairpin.
I just felt with a car that was potential for pole in qualifying, how it should have done what we expect Lewis to do from a drive from the back, just absolutely carve his way through. He was still down in like 15th and for a long while, and just wasn't quite making the progress I expected.
I don't know if there's maybe a bit of a mentality of like you need to keep it clean, because you can take your time and pick up a few points, or you can go balls to the wall and end up in the wall, because Canada's such a narrow circuit, barriers are right there. So there was that risk of getting caught up in a crash or getting taken out or something like that, or making a mistake. I don't know if that was maybe playing on his mind a bit, sort of play it a bit cautious. Sometimes you need to go for it, but I mean, 5th place, I'll take that. It's still a solid result. And, coming to Silverstone, I think they'll be quite strong there because they are good in a straight line.
Keeps the race alive, the title race. It's a really good drive from where he was come the come the start of the race. Louis Fenton, Leclerc just couldn't catch up to Russell after the restart. But there we go. That's Canadian Grand Prix in the books. We'll dig out some dig them out, but we'll mention some drivers next week. I don't normally get a mention, see how their seasons are going, check back into that. And of course, we'll preview the big one, the home of Formula One, as Steve has just boldly chest out declared it.
Oh, it is.
I like it. I'll take it any day of the week. I'm sure there's someone that would argue with it, but then there's some people that would argue that the grass is green and the sky is blue. So, make of that what you will. But as we are, Steve, lead us out, my man.
Yeah, thank you very much for watching. Love seeing you getting involved in the chat. It was a great chat this week. Love all the opinions. Williams will do all right next year, EJ. I believe that too. So yeah, we will see you 7:15. Yes, they will. 7:15 on Monday for the preview of the home of Formula One.